Okay then, hi everyone and good afternoon. Welcome to your first Friday back after half term. With that brings us to a new science unit. So hopefully displayed on your screen now, you can see that we're going to be exploring animals, including humans. And we're going to be looking at flow number 1, which is childhood to adult. So we're going to be looking at the life cycles of a human today. Okay. So key questions, we're going to be thinking about what are the stages of the life cycle of a human and how is each stage different. We did talk about this in a previous unit that we did way back in September now, when we looked at life cycles of plants. So we're going to be thinking about some of those things, but this particular session is going to focus on humans and how humans change throughout their lives. A bit of an assessment checklist. So hopefully from today's session, we'll be able to understand the life cycle of human beings. You'll be able to know how a human life cycle is the same as and different to other animals. So hopefully we know that humans fall into the category of animals. We are mammals. So how are we similar to other mammals? How are we different to other mammals? I can describe the changes as humans develop to old age, and I can explain some of the changes that take place in puberty. Now, as we get into the summer term, that final question will be something we explore in a little bit more detail. So some of the things that we talk about in here will obviously address some of those things, but we won't be going into those key details today. So the first thing that I'd like you to do is obviously to try and think back to year 3 when we looked at Mrs. Gren. Now, Mrs. Gren isn't just an old lady. She does represent these words here: movement, respiration, sensitivity, growth, reproduction, excretion, and nutrition. And if you can't remember what all that means and where that all comes from, I have attached a video. So if you do copy the slides, which have been given to you on Google Classroom, if you just press play, that will take you to that. Or if it doesn't work, you can copy the link and follow that to the website, which is on YouTube. Okay, and that just talks about life processes. So what makes things alive? Okay, so that is year 3 knowledge. But just to recap, if you can't remember, that's what that does there. Okay. So, like I mentioned previously, some of the stuff we have looked at before when we were back in school in September was we looked at life cycles of plants, and we did touch upon life cycles of a frog was one of them. We looked at butterflies as well. Okay, so you've got those basic life cycles, which again we have covered before. I think we actually used this picture in our book. Some of us drew it, and that is the life cycle of a tomato plant, which I'm sure as the summer comes we could all have a go at growing. So what I want you to think about first of all, and again, you can put this into a Google Doc, you could record yourself in a video, or you could just send your thoughts or research over to your teachers, is what's the same and what's different about these two different life cycles. So the life cycle of a frog and the life cycle of a tomato plant, what's the same and what's different? And all I want you to do is just jot those things down, or just if you want to do some of your own research, find those things out and then send them over to your teachers. Any similarities or differences? And when we're talking about life cycles, you should see that that is sort of a complete circle, because these things are ongoing throughout, obviously, our lifetime. So seeds are planted, which we know they grow into plants, then become mature plants, they flower, they fruit. Obviously, we know a tomato has the seeds inside it. So the long-running debate, is it a fruit or a vegetable? So maybe you could find out a bit about that as well. Is a tomato a fruit or a vegetable? And then obviously those seeds can be planted and the cycle starts all over again. That's why it's called a cycle, because it is an ongoing process. The same as the life cycle of a frog. We get frog spawn, tadpoles, froglets, which obviously grow into adult frogs, which then lay more frog spawn, and the cycle starts all over again. Okay, so what similarities and what differences are there between those two things? Some of the key words and terminology that we'll be using throughout this session: human, so you've just got there the basic anatomy of a human, some bones and muscles there. Development, so those are the different stages throughout their life. So here we can see obviously a toddler all the way up into a grown adult who, his laptop has evolved throughout his life as well, by the looks of it. Gestation, which is all to do with young growing into obviously babies in this instance. So we've got a baby growing inside the mother's stomach. We've got an elephant baby, and then you've just got a few facts about the gestation period for different animals. So you should see there things like a giraffe. It only takes 12 days for a giraffe to be born. If you've ever had a puppy, you'll know that the adult dog is pregnant for 2 months. So you've just got a bit about gestation periods. Fetus, which is a baby. So here we can see the different stages and over the different weeks of a baby growing. Here we have a baby. So lots of different babies there. Some of them are enjoying food, sad babies, a happy baby, all different types of babies. A toddler, which is the next stage. Child in childhood, so lots of different children, just like you guys, starting to learn and do all different things. Teenagers, puberty and adolescence. So this is obviously the later stages of developing into a teenager, going to secondary school, college, those sorts of things. Adult, so when you get old like me, you become an adult, you have to pay bills and stuff. You can see how sad all these people are in this picture, even though they're smiling. They're sad because they've got paid bills. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that and the different stages, it will be really useful if you click on this link here, which says, how do humans change during their lifetime? So we've looked at a few of the key words from that. If you just watch this video, it'll tell you in a little bit more detail how those different things occur and at what sort of ages that they occur. So remember again, a human life cycle is a cycle. So the babies grow to be adults, reproduce, more babies are created, starts the life cycle all over again. Okay. Remember, at any stage in these life cycles, some parents choose or some adults choose not to have children, and that obviously will break the life cycle. But obviously, we've got lots of people on the planet that are continuing that. Same for frogs. Some frogs might get killed for whatever reason, might not lay any frog spawn, which will end the life cycle of the frog. Same for the tomato plant or any other type of fruit or vegetable. If anything happens or for any reason, if there's a drought, if the soil's not right, it might stop that life cycle as well. So just watching that video to find a little bit more about life cycles, okay? Then what I'd like you to do is have a go at, because that video will help you, because it is a BBC bite-sized link, that one. So there is some further information on there as well, not just a video. But that will enable you to complete this task here. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different pictures there of different stages of a life cycle. And they're labelled A, B, C, D, and E. And all I'd like you to do, please, is order those correctly. So what is the first stage in the life cycle of a human? The second stage, third stage, fourth stage, and fifth stage. Okay, and you could put a brief explanation with that, or again, just share the order that you think they go in with either myself or your class teacher. Following that, set on the same link that I shared with you previously. So if you're not sure, it's this link here, the How Do Humans Change During Their Lifetime. If you just click on that, that will take you to the correct page, which is where, again, this activity, if you would rather do the interactive version, is also on there. There is just a short quiz to ask you a few questions based on what you found out. And again, share those scores with us. We do like to see the scores that you're getting for things like quizzes. So please make sure you do send those over. Also, what we've got here is a little bit of a checkpoint to see how you found those. And again, please share your scores for these. So there's going to be 3 questions. First question is, the amount of time it takes for a baby animal to develop inside its mother's body is called the something period. Is it A, digestion, B, gestation, or C, fertilization? So we did talk a little bit about that. If you're not sure, it was on the slide that talked about the length of time that different animals take to have children. Question number 2. While a baby is developing inside the woman's body, we say she is geriatric, adolescent, or pregnant. Which of those answers is correct? A, B, or C? And again, just send those over. It does say question 4, but this is definitely question 3. It says select 2 changes that can happen to people during old age. A, growing new teeth. B, hair starting to grow under their arms. C, their hearing gets worse. D, they grow taller. E, joints become stiffer, or F, learning how to talk. So 2 changes that happen to people during old age. Okay. If you don't want to find out the answers because you haven't had a chance to answer those or research those yet, obviously pause now because the answers are going to be coming up shortly. If you have had a go at those and you do want to find out the answers, I can share those with you now. So the answer to question number 1 was B, question 2 was C, and question 3 was C and E. Okay. If you disagree with any of those or you found out anything different, again, please remember to share that with us because we do like to find out what your research has uncovered. Right then, onto the independent tasks. So using what you've learned from those videos, the brief explanation from the checkpoint questions, you're now going to be responsible for doing some of the fluency, thinking, explaining, and solving tasks. So the first one that I'd like you to do is I'd like you to draw a human life cycle. And again, I'd like that diagram to look just like the ones that we discussed with the tomato plant and the life cycle of a frog. So it should be a circle. And using those different stages that were identified in the representation, mainly from the BBC Bitesize page. So thinking about those and creating your own human life cycle. And then what I'd like you to do, and it can be annotated, so it might be good to do it as a Google Doc, or it might also be good to do it, obviously, on paper. It's entirely up to you. I'd like to add some further information about each stage of the human life cycle, please. Moving on. So once you've done those, I would like you to have a go at the probing or thinking questions. And the first 2 are convince me questions. And the first one is convince me that not all stages of the human life cycle are important. Convince me that not all stages of the human life cycle are important. Is there a particular stage that could be missed out? Is there a stage that's not as important as later stages? Make sure you give your reasons why, or you might think that they're all equally important. But again, you need to explain why. The second part says, convince me that all stages of the human life cycle last for the same amount of time. So what that means is, are we a toddler for the same amount of time as we're an adult? Are we an adolescent for the same amount of time as we are elderly, for example? So are they all the same amounts of time that we obviously are all those different stages? So have a think about those. And again, just write a convince me answer to explain your reasoning. The next part, what's the same, what's different? The human life cycle and the life cycle of a plant. So back at the start of this session, we were looking at the similarities and differences between the life cycle of a tomato plant and the life cycle of a frog. Now, I'd like you to compare the similarities and differences between humans and plants, okay? Then the second part of that, what's the same, what's different? The gestation period of a human and the gestation period of an elephant. So that information can be found, if we go back a few slides, this slide here. So on here is where that key piece of information is, okay? So we've got the gestation period of an elephant at the top, and hopefully from your research, you were able to find out what the gestation period of a human is. So you're comparing the similarities and differences between those. What happens? Is it the same amount of time? Why is that amount of time different? So again, your research might feed into that. The next thing that I'd like you to do is the further extension or explaining task, okay? And it says, Dr. Spartacus says that the baby and the doll, which are in the pictures here, here's the baby, and here's the doll, are the same. What 2 things can the baby do that shows that it is living? And then explain your reasoning. So you could start by just ticking or crossing, well, obviously ticking the ones that the 2 things that show that it's living. So think about what you watched in the Mrs. Gren video. What 2 things can the baby do that the doll can't do? And then explain why that proves or makes it really clear that the baby is alive and the doll is not. Okay? Even though the doll does look a bit scary, it's not alive. Funny eyes. Cool hair. Baby's lying down. Finally, the rich or the solving task. You've got the little guy from Toy Story, Clark, that guy. and it says, create an alien life form and describe its life cycle. So now, using all of the knowledge you've acquired from this session, you're going to be creating your own alien. And it can look and behave however you want, but you need to create a life cycle for it. So think about the gestation period. How long does it take to be born? How long is it in its earliest stages of its life? Does it get older quicker? Does it learn things faster? How long is it an adult for? Does it go through all the stages the same as a human? Does it live longer than a human? At what stage in its life does it reproduce? Okay. So then show how this is the same and different to the human life cycle and that of other animals. Okay. So lots of different tasks for you to complete there. Again, it is a Friday afternoon, so do as much of that as you can. If it goes into your Saturday and Sunday, fantastic. Remember, though, to share everything you do create, so especially your checkpoint answers, answers to the quiz, and then any of the thinking, explaining, and solving answers. Make sure you share those either with myself or your class teachers. Again, we do love to see those. And obviously, with the current announcement of schools reopening on the 8th of March, this is something that we will be continuing with when we return to school. So this is the unit of work that we will be picking up on when we all come back to school. So if you do have any further questions or there's things you need explaining any further, please make sure that you send a question or to either myself or your teacher. Remember to look on the daily timetable because there is further links that could help you with the research. Remember to follow any of the links that I've posted on the slides. And as I say, use the research to help you to do as much of this as you can. Again, have a great Friday afternoon. Thanks for listening and enjoy your weekend if I don't speak to you before. Thank you.